They say variety is the spice of life. So whether you're sitting with a scotch in front of a fire or standing outside freezing your butt off because your buddy Rich says he's tired of watching your reviews just staring at your face in your office. Screw you, Rich. Either way, it's nice to have options. Today on 200 Hi-Fi, the ThieAudio Legacy 3 2BA1DD Hybrid Dynamic Driver IEM. It's a stupid name, but it's a really cool headphone. And it's got a little bit of variety. A couple of options for you. Stay tuned. We'll talk about how it is. So where to start with these ThieAudios? Well, let's start at the top. Let's talk a little bit about treble. For certain, these IEMs are recessed. They're not bright. They are not forward. The treble is actually pulled back a pretty good bit, especially in the sort of mid to upper treble. I think the area where if it's too forward, it really, really hurts your ears. That's the area this is primarily recessed. There's plenty of extension. And I think the difference here, and it's worth noting, the treble doesn't come out overbearing versus the mid-range or the bass, but it also isn't clipped off, right? So you still get plenty of those high notes. You get plenty of that cymbal shimmer. You get plenty of the high electronic sounds. It's wonderful, but it's definitely recessed. And in this IEM, that's actually a really, really good thing. These things really come alive when you turn the volume up a little bit. And oftentimes in a headphone that's got a bit more forward treble, when you turn that volume up, it gets really hard to listen to and can really, really hurt your ears. And these absolutely don't do that. The mid-range, solid, a little bit forward, maybe making up for that treble being a little bit recessed. I don't quite want to call that mid-range bloated, but if you've watched some of my other videos, when I'm talking about the Starfield Moondrops, and say, hey, the mid-range is actually a little bit thin, and I noticed it mostly with male vocals, but only when I compared it back to back with another IEM. These are the IEM I compared it back to back with, where I found that mid-range a little bit thin. So while in the Starfields, the mid-range is a little bit thin, just a little bit, I still love them to death. In these, the mid-range is a little bit bloated. It's just a little bit too forward for me. It feels like the mid bass is actually pulled up into it, and it adds just a hint of bloat in that mid range. Not a deal breaker, but not the greatest. The bass, oh boy, is this the area where these headphones really excel. That bass is solid, reaches all the way down, very, very deep bass. Certainly sub-audible, so we're talking frequencies under 20 hertz that the human ear really can't hear. All you get is that sort of pressurized room air shaking feeling. And tell you what, experiencing that in IEMs kind of makes your eyeballs rattle. It's a good time. It's an absolutely great time. But the bass is a little bit sloppy. It never feels very, very tight. It always feels a little bit overdone, but that's what makes them fun. They're not an analytical headphone. They're a really, really fun headphone to listen to, and they're tunable. They have those options. And I think that's another thing that makes these a must to have on your shelf. They're just a ton of fun to listen to. Located on the back of these IEMs are a set of dip switches that read ON and KE with a 1 and a 2 underneath them. Cryptic. You wouldn't have any idea what these things meant if it weren't for some internet articles and instructions. The idea here is the one on the left adjusts the bass. So flip that switch up, you get a little bit of extra bass. In my experience, flipping it down actually helps get rid of a little bit of that mid-range bloat, but still. The one to the right affects the treble. Bump that up, you actually get a little bit more treble. Again, not a major difference. You know, these dip switches are tuning and not changing overall the sound of these IEMs. But it's really, really cool to have those options to let you play a little bit. So if you do a couple of complaints overall for these IEMs, I find them to be fragile. As you've probably seen, I really like to replace the stock cables that come with IEMs with a set of balanced. I have that FiO BTR5. I have a balanced headphone amp on my office desk. Really enjoy listening balanced. I think you just get every little bit out of the earbuds by doing that, or every little bit out of the earphones by doing that. So I recommend it and really enjoy it. I've had different cables on these 3 or 4 times, and there are cracks that have begun to form and little pieces of plastic that have chipped off around where that cable plugs in. So just something to be mindful of. If you're going to change them out, maybe you change them out and stick with whatever you've changed them to. Probably the safest bet for you. I think part of what makes these IEMs so special is their hybrid nature. So these IEMs have 2 balanced armature drivers and 1 dynamic driver. What does any of that mean? So dynamic drivers are drivers just as you think about them today. It's a tiny little speaker, just like the speaker in your house, just like the speaker in your car, just like the speaker in most headphones you probably are accustomed to today. Balanced armatures are a little bit different. And while we're not going to dig deep into the mechanics of balanced armatures, let's put it this way. They're very, very small. They operate a bit more like a woodwind instrument than a traditional driver with a moving coil that moves a driver. We'll put a link up here to an article about balanced armatures. The long and the short of it is they tend to be very accurate. They tend to be able to handle power really well and tend to be able to play really loud. So when you put a couple of balanced armatures in for mid and high range and a dynamic driver in for low, you end up with drivers doing the jobs that they're best suited to. And that's what you've got in this headphone. You've got that really powerful, deep and punchy bass. You've got those nice, smooth mids and highs, although again, a little bit recessed, but really good in these because these really, really like to be turned up loud. And that's when they sound best. So overall, I absolutely love these little guys. They live attached to my portable, my ThieAudio BTR5, again, which I'll put a link up to and do a review shortly. For now, there's links to all of these products below. Big fan of this particular pair of IEMs, and you probably will be too. Again, I am Evan. This has been 200 Hi-Fi's review of the ThieAudio Legacy 3. Be sure to click that bell. I upload once a week, once every other week. You're not going to get bombarded. And be sure to like to help me with that YouTube algorithm. Thank you, 200 Hi-Fiers, and have a great one.